Welcome to You Here Big Girls. This is Luna.
And I'm Momtaku.
And welcome to a special edition of our podcast to celebrate the release of volume 35, Bad Boy.
Luna, I know how you feel about the series, so I just have to know, have you even read Bad Boy?
I have read a very crappy translation, but I skimmed over most of it because I'd say it's not my cup of tea. But tish.
Okay, fair enough. I read it, and I know my community was still really excited about it. I mean, it wasn't that deep, but I thought that there was still plenty to talk about. And also to talk about Shingeki Fly, the whole bundle that came with it.
Because you pre-ordered it and you actually received the whole art book, right?
I did. In fact, I guess we ordered it back in October, or I ordered it back in October.
A long time ago.
Yeah. And I didn't even know what I was really ordering. All I knew was my dragon hoard, I needed volume 35. So I didn't care what else was in that package. But yeah, I got the whole thing. And I'm happy about it. It's actually beautiful.
Did it come with a scarf and something else as well?
A scarf and a key, but I will not be taking those out of the packaging. I think my plan is next anime con I go to, I think I'm going to one in July. I'll find some little kid cosplayers and I'll just hand it to them, somebody who will.
Cute.
Yeah, there's always little kid Eren Yeagers and Mikasas, so I think maybe I'll just do that with it.
Oh, that's sweet.
But yeah, the rest of it was.
I thought
really
you were
cool.
going to keep it as a collector's item and just.
I am not that kind of a collector.
Store it for all eternity.
Yeah, I don't think so. I'm just going to leave it as it is. Okay, but you're not off the hook entirely. Because even though you're not joining me for the chapter discussion, you're going to come back after the break so I can hear all about your recent trip to Japan.
I mean, we say recent, but it was 5 months ago at this point.
Well.
But at the time, the anime was just finishing airing. I think it had just finished. So there were a couple of Attack on Titan events going on that I visited, one in Kyoto and one in Osaka. I'll talk a little bit about that as well as my overall trip. Plus, this year, a couple months ago, you finally came and visited me in the Netherlands.
I did. Has it actually been a couple of months ago? It feels like it was 2 weeks ago.
It feels to me like it was forever ago.
When was it? Was it April?
It was March.
It
was March.
Okay.
Yeah.
Man. All right.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. I made my first trip to the Netherlands, and it exceeded all of my expectations.
Yeah, and then some.
Oh, absolutely.
Alrighty. So, who will be joining us, or joining you, I should say, for the chapter discussion?
So joining me today are 3 people who most definitely have read Bad Boy. I have the writer, Lostcauses, No Regrets, my artist friend Marie, and for the first time on the podcast, translator Tsuki-no-ura.
Well, that's my cue. Good luck, everyone, with recording. And Momtaku, I guess I'll see you after the break. Bye.
Would each of you please introduce yourself? Lost, let's start with you.
Hi there, I'm Lostcauses, No Regrets on Tumblr, and Lostcauses on AO3, and Lostcauses on Twitter. I've been active in this fandom since about 2015, I think. So I've been around for a wee while.
And Marie?
Hi, I'm Marie. You might know me under the name Seitsen Sarvi, which is just unpronounceable online. And as well, I discovered Shingeki in 2016 or 15 or 16. I can't remember, but I know it cursed me so bad I was drawing only that for the 6 following years. That's where I'm at.
Okay, and first time on the podcast, Tsuki. Although that's not how I say it, so you're going to have to say it correctly again.
Okay, well, it's Tsuki-no-ura from Tumblr, basically. So I joined in 2017, and theoretically I'm supposed to mostly be translating things, but somehow I've ended up just talking more and more about meta lately. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, you have one of the most active inboxes on Tumblr. I think you and Lost are carrying the meta community at this point, or at least, the corner of it that I hang out in.
Carrying the torch.
Well, it was kind of manageable until one day it just kind of exploded, and that was it. You kind of, I try and how would I say, just do as much as I can, but at some point you just kind of have to go, yep, this is it. I'm just doing as much as I can, kind of a thing.
Yeah. So I'm curious, how many unanswered asks do you have in your inbox?
I think it's about 20, I think, because it kind of goes between 2 and 3. Yeah.
Oh, you're good.
I honestly couldn't tell you. There's asks lurking in there from about 10 years back.
I know. I've got 3,318 unanswered.
Oh my God.
Oh, just a baby compared to you then.
Well, that just shows you what a slacker I've been. Like, it's ridiculous. But I mean, that's 12 years.
It's funny how that works, because I know posting art and such, nobody has ever asked me a single question.
Hey, that's not true. I asked you a question, remember?
At least one.
Your art speaks for itself.
Well, perhaps once or twice people have asked questions.
I think that's because artists are inherently scary.
Are they?
Yes.
I think so. People are in awe of artists.
Well, I can promise you they're just like little goblins like everyone else.
Yes, well, we know that, obviously, but
people don't know.
All right, well, let's get into it. We're here to talk about Bad Boy. Tsuki, is that a good translation for it? I mean, we've been calling it Bad Boy. Is that reflective of what the Japanese is?
Well, that's, how would I say, when you go into the dictionary, that's what it kind of gives you. But I think the problem is when you think of it in English, you kind of go, oh yeah, bad boy. I don't know. To me, I think of James Dean, like, wow, bad boy is the kind of image I get. But it's I suppose it's like rascal, kind
Okay.
of a thing. Almost like an irrepressible child kind of a thing. Like you can't keep them down. So it's bad in that sense. I have a definition that I did put on my blog somewhere, but yeah, so it's that kind of a thing. So it's more like rascal or scamp is the other kind of words that they give for it. So
All right.
it's kind of like get back here, you rascal, kind of a feel to it, I think.
I mean, maybe that's like in the eyes of the gang members, he was definitely like scamp or rascal. So maybe Bad Boy is like their attitude before he unlocked his powers and, ripped them to shreds. Well, I thought before we get into the chapter, we'd talk briefly about the Shingeki Fly merchandise bundle. And I know 3 of the 4 of us on the call did receive that. I know I've already talked in the intro with Luna about that. I was totally overwhelmed by it. What about you guys? Tsuki, I know you were the last of us to get it. What did you think?
I think the first thing was the weight of the box. I couldn't believe it, because what I did was I kind of went offline because I didn't want to have any spoilers. So in that sense, I think I was really almost apprehensive about it, even though like I kind of knew the Bad Boy, the manga would have something to do with the teacup. But then, is there, you open it and you look at the volume and, they have this instruction sheet, and like Japanese, their instruction sheets are very thorough. So I ended up like reading it thoroughly, playing with the lock, like don't twist it too much and that kind of thing. Yeah, it's kind of funny because I ended up being really anxious to read the thing. So I went to get all my soft toys and sat around before I actually opened the thing. So yeah, it's kind of quite an emotional experience, actually.
Yeah, I thought so too. Like it made me, I mean, I couldn't read the instruction sheet and I couldn't read Shingeki Fly. I had my phone out with the translation app trying to get the gist of it, but I just felt really emotional. Like it was another one of those things that just feels like the culmination of all the effort and time I've put into it, when it's actually a celebration of all the effort and time Isayama and his colorist put into it. What about you, Lost? What did you think?
Oh, I thought it was amazing. Again, like Tsuki said, it's, I was astonished. I consumed every spoiler I could get. I used to love the spoilers every month. So I got really sort of caught up in, the spoilers coming out again. And I really enjoyed that. But yeah, when the box arrived on my doorstep, I was like, wow, no wonder it costs so much to ship here. But yeah, it's the art book is stunning. It's absolutely beautiful. It's beautifully produced. And the interview with Isayama and his colorist, which somebody posted a translation of, I think, Attack on Fans on Twitter. posted a translation of that, and that's a really interesting interview. But I think the thing that really blew me away was the manga panels. These huge reproductions of the manga panels, they're absolutely stunning. To see all the rough workings on them as well, I find really fascinating. So I think that's something that I really will treasure. And I'm absolutely going to be framing one or two of the panels, and I think you'll probably be able to guess which panels it is I'll be framing. So the whole thing is just beautifully put together, and like you say, it's a lovely culmination of the series, and it does feel like it's been put together with great care, and it does almost feel like a gift to the fans. It's lovely.
I think that same Attack on Fans website translated those interviews. And one of the things that I thought was so cute, Marie, did you read those? Did you read any of those translations?
I read bits of them.
Okay. Did you read the one where he talked about the difference between French and American fans?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And I still can't exactly pinpoint what he meant by that, except that because the timeline was different from both events he visited, he probably felt different emotions at that time. But I'll leave you to introduce perhaps the little passage that this refers to.
This is regarding his overseas visits, right? He came to New York City first in October, and I got to be at that event.
Right.
And then he went to, how do you pronounce the city?
Angoulême.
Angoulême in France.
You do not pronounce it.
I do not. Okay.
The famous French Comics Festival.
So when he was talking about the New York fans, and of course I was in the audience, and we're all just like, hell yeah, and we're smiling and screaming, like it just, that was exactly the experience that I recall. And I do recall him being like emotional about it, looking at all of us and just being overwhelmed.
What I felt this interview meant was that the American fans were extremely receptive to the work and joyful, and like the French ones, by comparison, were more perhaps a little sad because it had ended, but also a little bit expectant.
Interesting.
Because what he says is just like when he saw the French fans, he thought, I see. And that's the experience you get with French people most of the time, so I can't fault him for that. Because my thought reading that was that I know that we are not as expressive an audience as Americans can be.
So maybe we ruined every other fan event for him.
Well, perhaps, or perhaps people should be more like the American fans. I think that's the case. I guess French people in an audience, in a crowd, I have, alas, not seen Isayama at this event, but I've seen some other people at this kind of events, and you can sense the feeling that they're expecting something, whatever it is, and that they're also respectfully, perhaps less expressive. It might sound like they don't care, but I think it's just that it's a different way of like interacting, which is perhaps more intimate and less outgoing.
Marie, did you not say as well that the Angoulême Festival is very much an industry event as much as a fan event?
Yes. So the main target of the events is professionals from the comics industry, and it's also open to the public, but in a much more reduced capacity. But I know that Isayama event specifically, I had many doubts about because the tickets went on sale without any advertisement. So I wondered if actual fans would go to see him, or if it would just be any random people. Luckily, from the interview, it sounds like they were real fans because they talked to him, as he says, like with a close way of talking to him. So I guess they knew what they were about. But it's very possible that this room was also attended by many professionals who would definitely not have been as expressive as fan of the series. So that's another possibility.
Well, it worked.
Yeah, I think we owe a debt of gratitude to the French for Bad Boy happening at all.
Well, I can't take the credit, but I will.
Well, being the representative French person here, I think we can give you the credit.
On behalf of my people, thank you.
Did you want to chime in anything, Tsuki, before we move on?
Well, I was kind of just vaguely thinking, like, Japanese people aren't really the most expressive either, so I don't, maybe he's just trying to gauge what the French people are really thinking, because in I suppose, like, the Japanese kind of, how would I say, they're not as effusive either, but at least he'd have a feeling for what they're thinking, and I don't know whether he's just feeling a bit more lost in, how would I say, in the French kind of not being so effusive. I don't know.
Well, I wonder if maybe you might be used to less expressive crowds naturally, but I wonder if perhaps experiencing the American crowds first might have given him like hopes that everyone would be like that, and then it wasn't the case.
Y'all, we were wild in that event. Like, it was the best.
That's your fault then.
I know. But if he had stopped with America, we would have gotten that 100-year-old prequel thingy. But because the French, you know,
we got better content. Yeah,
I want both, right? But yeah, that's so funny. All right, now before we get into the chapter, I'm going to put you on the spot again, Tsuki. You did an in-depth translation analysis, which, if anyone hasn't seen it, basically it's not a translation. It's like, this word can mean this. It likely means this, but it can also be, you know. And I always enjoy those. And it helps me to appreciate, like with a fan translation, man, the task that they've got to do, they've got to read it, understand it, and then try to make it fit in word bubbles, which is not the easiest task. And I'm sure when that happens, like, some nuance gets lost. I mean, they're having to just pick a word and go with it. And if the bubble allows 6 words, that's all they got. So I wondered if there was any, like, I know you've read the fan translations, you've done your analysis. I mean, was there any nuance in general that maybe gets lost for those of us who, you know, don't have the advantage of being able to really analyze the original text?
Well, I'd say, like, for translations in general, this is why I almost prefer to do this analysis thing, because the word can mean so, like, sometimes the word can have 2 or 3 meanings, but you have to choose one when you're making a translation. So that is one of the bigger issues. And I suppose the thing with Isayama, he didn't do it that much this time, but quite often he plays on these double meanings. And the biggest problem is when the word in English doesn't have, you can't find an equivalent word that would carry this meaning. And one of the things I'm thinking of, you know, when they had fan translations of old, and you always have this joke where someone writes this translations notes, especially on the anime, and then they put in a full paragraph of trying to explain what it is. If we could do that in, like, the manga volume, that would be great, you know, like just go back to the old times where people used to write all these translation notes and just put a paragraph here and there, just to kind of be able to point out that there's something interesting happening here, but you just can't convey it within those 6 words in the speech bubble. So that would be one of them. But the other thing I was thinking of is actually tone markers is a big one, because, like, Japanese have a lot of sentence endings, and that kind of, you know, the way, like, we try and send messages here and we try to put like /J or /SRS, that kind of thing. So one of the things I was thinking of is Japanese, like, there are a lot of these ending words that can kind of convey this, but it's not there in English. Should I give an example of how this works? Or
Yeah, sure.
So let's say to go is iku, yeah. So if I say ikuyo, it's like we're going, or let's go. If I say ikuzo, it's like let's go, that kind of a thing. So ikuze is like, oh, we're so enthusiastic, let's go, you know, that kind of a way. Ikuno, are we going? Or maybe as an explanation, ikuno, like you're telling someone, oh, we're going, this is what's happening. Or ikuno yo is like more appealing. So there are all these sentence endings that you can kind of put in, and it changes the tone. And so like, I suppose when you're reading it, then you can kind of hear the tone as well. But in English, like, what do you put? Let's go, exclamation mark, when some of it, like, you just can't really convey it. So I think one of the things is some of these, when you read it, you kind of know how it sounds. But in English, like, that nuance just gets lost. That would be a big one, all right.
I had this later in my outline, but I'll go ahead and ask you now. When you were looking at Levi's text, could you tell that it was a child speaking? Were there markers, or was there something in his way of speaking that would have indicated to you this is a child?
I think in the how would I say? Well, the feeling there, I think, was almost like that he's being bamboozled, kind of a thing. So it's, how would I say? It's like, well, the guy with the glasses was trying to tell him all these things, and it's almost like he is absorbing it as a child. So I'm not sure what way the fan translation had it. Like the first one is like, "So nano," it's like, kind of, really, wow. It's, to me, it kind of had the expression of a child kind of going, "Oh, is that it?" and all that kind of thing. So I'm not sure exactly if it's kind of sounds like a 10-year-old, but there is that kind of a childlike wonder, I guess. Like, hey, so it's not like you can kind of hear it when he goes. It's like, so it was that kind of a thing. But the last part there, that is kind of, I wouldn't put, like, it wouldn't really be a 10-year-old, but for the first few lines when he's going, "Oh, so nano," and I can kind of hear it all right.
Yeah, I wonder for that, like, you're used to how Levi speaks in the later volumes of the manga. Did this still feel like Levi? I guess it did.
The last one is kind of, yeah, that's where you have it all right, because I keep pointing out that he does the slurring. So it's like, 誰も信じねえから心配しなくていいよ, kind of a thing. So it's that kind of, that slurring sound is very typical of the way Levi speaks. So it's almost like you get to see a glimpse of Levi as he will be in that last speech bubble, basically. Yeah.
That's really cool. I wish I could read the language.
I know. I
Right.
love hearing this, because I've always been so aware of just how much nuance you miss reading the manga in translation, because, as Tsuki said, we haven't got these word endings, and we miss all the kind of, like, the ambiguities in the language. So that's why I'm always so fascinated to read the analysis of these translations. It's brilliant.
And I love knowing that when Japanese fandoms has disagreements on meanings, they must be completely different from ours. Surely they must have them, but they're not about the same things, that's for sure.
That's funny. It kind of makes us silly for disagreeing over anything, because the English translation is just so far,
Yeah, it always has different connotations that we pick up
Yeah.
on and we give meaning to, where I'm pretty sure it wasn't originally there.
I think for me, one of the big ones is the way pronouns aren't in it, and most of the time you just infer. So that's why in my analysis I like to put the pronouns that aren't used in brackets. So there's only, like, I feel like there's maybe 20% of the pronouns are actually said, and then the rest, it could be, is it I, is it we, who knows, kind of a thing.
And these pronouns have caused so much discussion in the fandom. These pronouns that aren't even there.
I know, this is me. I look at some analysis and I'm like, I bet this pronoun wasn't even there, kind of a thing. This is what the translator put in, and I feel like that's the biggest one, that how would I say, that is the biggest difference, because we're arguing over the pronouns, but the pronouns aren't even there to start with.
Wow. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get into the chapter now. Now, in the past, we've always started with, like, chapter impressions, which, I mean, this is such a tiny little chapter, but for tradition's sake, let's go ahead and give our chapter impressions. And, basically, did you love it? Did you hate it? Were you disappointed? Marie, let's start with you.
All right. So I really like the chapter in what it adds and what it doesn't add, because it elaborates on things we knew already, and I think that's good, but it gives some nuance and some some more elements of happenings we've never seen before, but not in a way that is going to completely change what we already know in the base manga, which I feel is what I was most worried about. I mean, I always trust Isayama to stay true to his characters because he cares about them a lot. But you never know what you could add afterwards once you've finished your big work. So it could have been anything, and I'm really glad it's this short Levi-centric. I mean, at first, I really didn't think we needed a Levi-centric prologue of any sort, because we've got that in a manga already. But after time passed a bit, I thought maybe it's also Isayama's way of owning what was made by also another artist and like integrating it all together. And I thought that was a very final feeling about that I really liked.
Thanks for that. I hadn't considered it from an artist's perspective. Lost, what about you?
Yeah, I really liked it, and I would certainly agree with everything Marie said as well, that there was a huge amount of speculation as to what would be in the chapter before it was published, some of which was quite wild. And I think, as Marie said, it doesn't really add anything to the overall plot or world building, but it does. I think it certainly answers one or two questions that the fandom has been speculating about for years. The most important one being, when did Levi's Acker powers awaken? And I know that's something we'll come and talk about later. So it was really good to get an answer to that. It cleared up some of the ambiguity about Levi's age when his mother passed. It was, it was lovely to see his close relationship with his mother, which has been hinted at and talked about. It was lovely to see that brought to the fore a bit. And I think it did actually provide some really nice background and nuance to Levi's character, which I thought was really nice, which nice is an odd word to use to describe what is actually a very dark chapter. I mean, it is very dark. It's very typical Isayama. I mean, he's got these moments of real pathos and then this just really brutal, gory violence that is clearly put there to shock. And then it sort of seeds into something much more sort of meditative. And then you get a little bit of humour at the end as well. I think, given it's so short, it is a bit of a it's a bit of an Isayama classic because it's got all his characteristics in there. And it does really feel like a gift to the fans, because he's always acknowledged that he knew right from the start that Levi was going to be a really popular character and, remained right through the series for a whole 136 chapters or whatever it was. So it does feel like a neat little gift to his fans. So yes, I really enjoyed it.
And what about you, Tsuki? Any surprises or disappointments, or was it exactly what you were expecting?
Well, kind of reflecting both Marie and Lost, but because I was going into it blind, I think the feeling is almost like a roller coaster ride. So we kind of knew what the first 4 pages were, so that was more like confirming that it was still more or less like the draft, and it is like a roller coaster ride. So you're kind of going up, and then here's all the action, and then like Lost said, it went from the gory action to, I have to admit, I was a bit confused about what the guy in the glasses was trying to do. So I actually had to flip back and forth, and then I realized like he was just trying to save himself, basically. And then we go into the really touching moment, and then the really shocking moment. And then I think for me, it was the last panel was really kind of the juxtaposition. And what I felt was like, so I'm looking at Levi's face in the last panel, and he's not bothered by it at all. And I kind of flipped back to the cover because I realized that's the significance of the cover, because that's what Gabby starts with. She's making fun of the way he's holding the cup. And then when you look at that, and then you look at the last panel, and you realize like Gabby's she's completely overwhelmed by the story. And that kind of made a nice juxtaposition. And I think the overall was that feeling of a roller coaster ride with all the rounds, and then whoosh, you're back safe at the station again. So yeah, it's, like I said, a like Lost was saying, a classic Isayama chapter with everything, but it's in a super mini intense ride, basically.
I think a lot of people pointed out that this is basically just Levi trauma dumping all over Falco and Gabby without
exactly
any prompting. Yeah. And being completely unfazed by it. He's just
he doesn't give a shit.
Or more likely, perhaps it doesn't even occur to him that it's a weird thing to say.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
He's just telling it like it is.
Now, I don't know that this chapter confirmed Levi's age, but I did see some rumblings about it in the Shingeki Fly book. And Tsuki, you can correct me if I'm wrong about this. He describes it as trying to speak like a 10-year-old Levi. So I assume, and maybe you all can clarify this for me because I'm not sure I followed it exactly, but it seemed to me that the scene where he kills the gangsters, makes the tea, in between that is the scene of Kenny abandoning him. I feel like those are not in chronological order, right? I would expect that Kenny probably abandoned Levi shortly after that, but, probably not the way it's depicted sequentially in the manga.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you that he just kind of mentioned that Kenny left, but it was like an interruption in the story. Willis, I did think that after he got the tea set, he went back, and that's the actual flow. Willis Kenny leaving him was some point, like you said, shortly after. I did get that feeling as well, all right?
Mm-hmm. That's the way I read it too.
And as a fandom, I feel like we'd had kind of assumed 10 to 12 years old, Levi was on his own. So I think that this really, and when he said, what would 10-year-olds sound like, that we're not like, that's not, I don't know that that's canon. He was just throwing out an age, I would imagine. So I do think it kind of fits in with what most of us had suspected as far as Levi's age when he lost his mom and how much time he'd spent with Kenny.
I know that Emika did the maths. I know Emika, who's been on this podcast before, she did the maths some time ago and came up with I think, pretty much exactly that age. So it all kind of like tied together nicely.
Isn't that interesting? I always think about that, like for people that have written meta a decade ago, or you Lost, who maybe wrote Levi a decade ago. And like you get this and it's just like you're nodding. You're like, yep, that's right. Yep,
I knew that already.
Exactly.
It's like, come on, the fandom actually wrote this multiple times over the last 10 years. But it is, I mean, it's nice.
Let me ask specifically about that. Now, the story Bad Boy felt very familiar to me, right? So had Isayama mentioned the teacup incident prior to this, or is this like fanon becoming canon, where we just all made the correct assumption?
No, he did definitely mention it, and he mentioned it as long ago as 2014. There is a magazine article, which I think was translated by Yusenki. Yeah, so he was asked in a 2014 magazine interview, why does Levi have such a way of holding a cup? And he said that he was thinking about drawing this one day. So this is like, how many years later? When he was a kid, Levi was living in slums and poverty. He was yearning for a life in clean and neat environment, not a rich life. When he finally obtained the tea and tea sets, those he had desperately wanted, he was rejoicing that finally he can drink it. But when he started to grip the handle and lift up the cup, the handle came off and his cup was shattered. He was so traumatized by this experience, and that's why he changed his way of holding cups to not using the handle. So that was 2014, and there's a lot of really beautiful and poignant fan art from about 2014, 2015, illustrating exactly this scenario. So the extra information that, of course, we get from Bad Boy is the fact that the tea set belonged to his mother, and that's a part that's not actually in the original magazine interview. But again, it just shows, how long Isayama has been thinking about these things, and he really is a master of the long game.
If I could add, was going through, I think it's the 2018 Oita, like one of the fans did ask him, about this story, do you think you'd have a chance to write it? And he was kind of like, at this rate, I don't think I would have a chance. So I was quite intrigued by that as well, because he clearly still remembered the story. when asked by the fan as well. So it's been not just he thinking about it from 2014, but it's still there in his mind at 2018.
That's amazing.
Well, he really had it in his mind for 10 full years.
Yeah.
So the teacup story was not new, right? So he'd kind of outlined it for it. The fandom understood the message and the assignment, created art for a decade, and then he confirmed it. But what was new, and maybe the only new piece in Bad Boy, was we finally know the exact moment that Levi had his powers awakened. I know there'd been speculation for years about that. Some people thought that it was when Ferlin and Isabel were killed, like when he attacked those Titans. I saw that proposed. I had always thought it was the scene where Kenny abandoned him, that's when the powers came out. But these are two different instances. So now there's no more question about it. Levi's powers were apparently awakened, I would think, pretty shortly after his mom died. But what is still a topic of confusion for everyone is like the Acker powers, Ackerawakening versus the Ackerbond. And I know I almost hate to bring it up because I know, Tsuki, you've talked forever of like, I feel like this is something we constantly talk about and still confusion persists. So I'm just going to like toss this out to you guys. Let's talk about the Acker abilities and the variety of those and how they manifest.
Shall I kick that one off?
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
Who wants to take that?
Okay, let's go for it. I think part of the confusion is so that there are multiple reigns of confusion here. So on the one hand, you have the Acker powers, which all the Ackerman or many of the Ackermans are able to manifest, and these seem to be triggered by a sort of period of stress or danger or trauma. Seen that with Levi, we saw it with Mikasa. We don't see it with Kenny, but Kenny obviously his powers had woken at some point. It doesn't seem to ever have happened with Mikasa's father.
Or with Kushal.
We never saw it with her. And the fact that she dies the way she did perhaps suggests that her powers never were awoken. But that's pure speculation on my part. On the other side, you've got the so-called Ackerbond, and the real problem with that is that the so-called Ackerbond is never mentioned really in the manga. It's discussed in it first appears in the Answers guidebook, which
was 2016, right?
Yes, and it wasn't just 2016. It was that book came out exactly the same week as Midnight Sun was published. And I don't think that's coincidental. And it addressed a lot of issues about Levi's relation to Kenny, Levi's relation to Erwin, their relationship to each other. And it did provide a lot of answers, but it did that out with the context of the manga itself. So if you read the Answers book and then you carry on reading the manga, and of course you get to chapters, I can't remember, is it 112, where Eren does his speech about, Ackerman's all been slaves and stuff like that. And then further on you get the conversation between Zeke and Eren sort of saying, no, that's just nonsense. The only reason Mikasa behaves the way she does is because she really likes you, and I've never heard anything about them being slaves. But if you haven't got the context of the Answers books, that is all really bizarre and confusing. And then when you take that together with the Acker powers, it all gets very mixed up. And I think quite a lot of that confusion is a result of the first time we see anyone's Acker powers awakening, it's Mikasa. And that coincides with the point which she meets her liege, the person that she pledges her allegiance to or who she chooses to follow. Whereas with both Kenny and Levi, these things are not simultaneous. I certainly agree with you, Momtaku, that I think Levi's Acker powers, well, obviously we know now, but even before we knew that, I think it was clear that they had activated long before he joined the Survey Corps, because that's where his prowess came from. Similarly, Kenny obviously had a great deal of power before he ever met Yuri, but it's only once they meet their chosen person or the person they choose to follow that they're able to exert that power to the, I can't remember how it's phrased in the answers book. Suki will be able to remember
to the maximum, I suppose.
They're able to exert this power to the
manifest
maximum.
the power to the maximum.
But they are two separate things. The power and the following of the significant person are two separate things. And I think the fandom has a tendency to conflate them. And that's where a lot of the confusion comes from. And part of that is due to the fact that so much of this is not discussed in the manga, but in the answers book and also in the characters encyclopedia that came later. So anyway, that's my take on it. I could go on about this. I have been going on about this probably for about 10 years. I'll stop now.
I was shocked thinking, wait a minute, there are people who haven't read the answers book?
I
always just forget there are casual fans.
Of course there are.
There are people who only watch the anime. And again, if you just watch the anime, you miss even more of it. So there's all these layers of the story building up.
Suki, your blog made me laugh recently when you were like, before reading this post, you must confirm that you have read these interviews, and that was just so funny to me. Because again, I kind of go into this thinking, oh, everybody has the same knowledge level that I do. And so I'm always like befuddled and puzzled when people say really stupid things.
I have to admit, well, I suppose for me, it's from the translator point of view, I suppose, because translation, it takes so much work. And well, fair enough, if you just kind of translate one throwaway sentence, you can kind of maybe skew it to the way you like. But when you're translating a whole interview, like if you try and make a mistake or twist it in one way, then you'll end up with, how would I say, contradictions further down. So from my point of view as a translator, if you're going to translate a whole passage, you can't be twisting every line or go back and check if it's like, you kind of have to almost make up a whole new lie if you're going to translate a whole passage worth. So when, I don't know if, like, from my point of view, from translator's point of view, this is where I kind of feel a bit offended, to be honest, that people translate these for the purpose of perpetuating some kind of strange conspiracy or something like that. So that was me being a little bit salty from my point of view, that we do this to let the fandom know what's going on. So that was me going, well, have you read this? And well, we didn't have the technology at the time. Like, sure, even when I was translating, we don't. But Google, Google Translate is here now, and it just occurred to me not even that long ago that you could put a page of text in.
Yeah, or pictures even.
Yeah, you can put pictures in, and you'll get the translated text back. So people keep saying, well, to start with, people keep saying these interviews are fake. But
no, really?
I have seen people say these interviews are fake. So
wow.
I found official links. So it's on, I think, Pocket Magazine, one of these.
Somebody should tell Kodansha they're publishing fake books.
I'm serious. Like, I've got them on my shelf over here. They're not fake.
So like the interviews are fake, or the I like, if it's translated wrongly, I feel like it's more kind of an honest mistake. So, but yeah, so you can actually check these days. You can run the page through Google Translate and go, oh, like, look, it says A here, but you said B, kind of a thing. But like, where did these crucial lines here, the one about maximizing the power, like that came out almost pretty much like what I tried translating and what the Google Translate came out. There's no difference really. I suppose the other one was the person or the entity that Levi has acknowledged as being above himself would be the other line as well that seems to keep coming under dispute. I suppose that, like you're saying, Momtaku, because there is all this background that I did think was quite relevant to understanding what's going on in this chapter, really, when it comes to what the Ackerbond, the Ackerbond, the Ackerawakening. So I was like, oh, I'm going to take this moment to push all these resources in.
I think part of the problem as well does stem from the fact that the Answers book was never actually published in English.
Yeah.
I believe it was published in German. I think there's a German publication version of it, but it's never been published in English. So I guess, but I mean, when it came out, there were two immediate translations of it, one by Yusenki and one by, who's the other translator?
I think it was Fukushu.
Fukushu, that's right. They both translated it. Ningensuki translated it as well, so I think there was three translations of it. And of course, the character encyclopedia, it's widely available, and there's a lot of really relevant information in that as well.
Yes, and that's been translated, and I still see people going, this isn't real.
Alternative reality.
Well, and it's pretty, I mean, it's not like shocking or inflammatory. I think people really object to the idea of Levi being a slave. Nobody's saying that. Like, Zeke said that, or not Zeke, Aaron said that. Like, nobody, the fact that Levi, Kenny, and Mikasa all chose a person to exert their power in behalf of, they all chose a person. This is not a bad thing. This is just,
Are we listening to Aaron now on any
apparently,
matter?
Aaron and Zeke, apparently.
It's the only time I agreed with Zeke, actually. I think there is something else that's contributed to the confusion as well, is Kenny's speech right before he dies, when he says they're all slaves to something. What are you, a hero? But of course, that and there has been, I think, quite a bit of misinterpretation about what he means there. But of course, what Kenny is saying there is something that drives everyone forward, whether it's love or women or wine or being a hero, which again, of course, is what Levi is. Levi feels like he is obliged to use his power for good. And I think, again, it's like Bad Boy is very much the origin of that. But I think there has been a bit of confusion about what Kenny is actually saying there, because he does have this very clipped way of speaking. What are you, a hero?
Oh, if I could comment on something, I did realize there could be a bit of a, how would I say, like a translation misunderstanding. The word that Isayama used for the person that the Ackermen serve, the thing is, the dictionary gives the options as Lord or Master. And quite often, I'm guilty of this myself. I put Master in as an option. I saw someone put, like a Japanese person explain, so the complement of Master is not slave, but it's the vassal or retainer or the liege person, basically. So I'd realized this, but I didn't realize that in translating it to Master, that there is a possibility people are thinking that the complement to Master is slave, and that could be part of where the confusion comes from. That when Levi acknowledges Irvin as his master, that he's considering himself a slave. I don't know, but that kind of was aired as a possibility in my mind as to why they do think that there's some kind of master-slave relationship going on based on whatever way the translation was interpreted.
I think there is certainly a bit of that, but again, I think that reading lacks a lot of nuance. I'm being polite here. I'm choosing my words carefully. I think, again, the answer book does say, certainly the translations I've read, is it's about the Ackermans choosing somebody whose existence exceeds their own.
Mm-hmm.
And in the No Regrets manga and visual novel, it's about Levi chooses to follow Erwin because his eyes are set on something that Levi can't even see. And until he knows what that is, he'll follow him. So it's a very conditional following as well. And I think that's one of the things that, again, that I think often gets missed, is that Levi doesn't choose to follow Erwin because he's completely starstruck. He follows him because he thinks this guy is doing something good. He doesn't quite understand what it is, but he knows that he's got a big idea that is worth pursuing. So it is a conditional following at first. And I think it's like, but that relationship grows from there. It's absolutely not blind acceptance. And I think, again, that's a nuance that often gets lost.
I feel like that was one of the charges leveled against Mikasa all the time was blindly following Eren, blindly. And I always thought that was a little bit unfair because the entire last 2 arcs is very much her questioning Eren. Is this the guy I knew? She definitely was examining that relationship. And I don't think she ever stopped loving him, but she certainly came to the point where she recognized that this was not somebody she could follow. And of course, she ended up ending his life. So Armin in the last arc is the one that's always like, this is Eren. We can believe him. Let's trust him. Come on, guys. It's not Mikasa. It's Armin. And yet Mikasa is constant. She's always the one like side-eyeing and like taking off the scarf. And, I think that was pretty clear to me that she was definitely questioning.
It's the whole point of how it ends as well. That's what breaks the curse. That's Ymir is able to see that Mikasa can love somebody but not be shackled by this love, not be blinded by it. That's the whole point.
Yeah, because Mikasa kind of accepts Eren on her own terms in the end. Like Lost says, she loves him, but she has to stop him. And I think that gave Ymir the idea that she can keep her love, but she can also walk away.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thinking like, I feel bad for people that didn't get that message because I know there's, everyone has the right to read it the way they want. But that particular, what you all are saying is exactly how I read it, and it made it more satisfying.
And somehow even more tragic for Mikasa's story, specifically because knowing and loving as she does and still taking that step is just, it feels even bigger.
It's
knowing just how much is followed and believed and loved all this time. That was it could only have been her.
So Lost, I wanted to go back to something that you said before, reciting Kenny's words and how Levi felt compelled to be a power for good. Do you think there's anything in this chapter that lends to that? Like we saw in No Regrets, how he took care of Ferlin and Isabel and had like his little gang of people he protected. But like when Kenny says to him, a hero, does what we got in Bad Boy kind of feed into that?
Oh, very much. I mean, it's very much in keeping with everything. And again, it doesn't give us anything new about Levi's character, but I think it's very, very much in keeping with what we do already know about him. And it just adds to that. And I think quite a lot of the discussion I read after the chapter was sort of saying, well, you can understand even more clearly now why Levi did feel compelled to protect those who could not protect themselves, because he was a very vulnerable child himself. He had these moments of extreme vulnerability in his life after his mother died. And even when he was under Kenny's protection, one of the things that Bad Boys show is that, there were people out there who were willing to risk preying upon him, despite the fact he was under Kenny's protection. So he was a vulnerable and abused and exploited child himself. And I think we always knew that, but Bad Boy very much makes that explicit, and we actually see it happening, and it doesn't bear thinking what would have happened if the gang had had their way. I mean, that's horrific. So I think it's very, very easy to understand why, Levi, who is a deeply compassionate individual, would have felt compelled to protect and fight for those who could not fight for themselves. And we see that first with Isabel, and we see it again later on. We see it throughout the manga. There are these moments where, Levi his gaze is drawn to a woman and a child who are clearly suffering and impoverished and hungry. We see it again when he and Historia set up the orphanage after the uprising arc, and we see it right again, right through with the way he adopts or is adopted by Gabby and Falco. He has this very compassionate aspect to his character that goes alongside the violence. So yeah, I think while we didn't learn anything new, I think it really does provide extra nuance to Levi's character, and it's very, very much in keeping with who he is.
Well, perhaps not necessarily exactly on that, but one thing that ties to what we knew, but what is also new in a way that jumped to me was how the other characters refer to Kenya as Levi's dad, and how shocked he is at this, and how he wonders, and how that brings the first steps to what we know happened afterwards. He always thought that could have been his dad, I suppose, or wondered, or just yeah, that was the most shocking thing I felt to me in this chapter.
I thought so too. You know, that fact that he carried with him that it was his father that had abandoned him his entire life. And it's only after he found out that it was his uncle that Levi smiles for the first time in the manga. Like, it's like he's got this weight of like his mom dying and then his father, he thinks, abandoning him. And he's carrying this weight all the way through chapter 69, I think, when he recognizes that it's his uncle. It wasn't, not that that makes it any better, but.
And yeah, the most responsible Kenny has ever been was waiting for his powers to activate before leaving, but that's all pretty much all he did.
Actually, well, I kind of feel like I have a little bit maybe of a different perspective of kind of Kenny and Levi's relationship, and part of it could be just the way one of the lines got translated in the English version that I did mention somewhere. I think it's that line, something about how to swing a mug and how to swing a knife, something like that.
That's right.
But what it is in the Japanese, I think it's like the way to conduct yourself, but it has the implications of how to set yourself up for your future. And I kind of feel like that's probably the way the Japanese kind of interpret it as well. Because the first time we see Levi talk about Kenny, he's on the rooftop and he looks at the setup and he realizes he's using this setup that's one other person would have done it like this, and that's how he realizes Kenny is on his heels. So I always kind of get quite a strong impression that even like one of the things Kenny would have done was basically he did teach Levi like all these kind of strategies, fighting strategies, and because that's kind of a higher level as well, like how to do a stakeout basically. So even though that's just that little bit, I basically can't help but think that Kenny did teach Levi all of these skills, and not just depending on the Ackerawakening.
No, absolutely, yeah.
Part of it, I suppose, is because I suppose for me anyway, I grew up watching all these martial arts movies, and there is a certain kind of a feel to it. I'm not sure if it'd be kind of the exact same in Japanese. So you're like as if you're an apprentice, and then your master teaches you, and then like you go out into the world, kind of a thing. But I think the bit that people seem to argue is the part that Kenny really seems to want to kill Levi when they meet again. But from the point of view that like when you're at the top of your field, like you can't hold back. That kind of feels like it makes sense to me, rather than that he's actually, well, he is trying to kill Levi, but from the point of view that when you're at that level of competition, you give your all, kind of a feeling.
And he should be better if he wants to live, just.
And it is a classic trope from these martial art films as well, of the student going up against the master, and you know that the epic fight between them, and I think there is even like immediately after, or the scene that you're talking about, Suki, or is it just when Kenny bursts into the bar, that immortal panel? There is a panel which I don't think ever made it into the anime, where he sort of says, "Oh, that shrimp is my pride and joy," or something.
Yeah,
I just love Kenny.
He's like putting up a fight, and that's the best way to honor how that Kenny taught him was actually to be better and show it. Yeah.
I must admit, I was kind of holding out that we would see a bit more Kenny in Bad Boy. I was a wee bit disappointed that we didn't get to see more Kenny, but I did really like the way that Kenny's presence really did loom large, even though he wasn't actually there. I thought that was actually very telling, because it just shows just how much power Kenny had.
And he did redraw the panel of Kenny walking away.
Yes.
I double-checked that. That's a brand new look at that scene. Going back to translations, I was reminded that 5 months ago we got leaks about Bad Boy. And one of the leaks was that it was that Kenny was actually Levi's father. And that, obviously that Levi was a pure Ackerman blood because he was the product of incest. And
Oh, God.
it's just, I know. And so 5 months ago, we get these spoilers. Kenny is Levi's dad. And, it's funny with the spoilers because, they're not always wrong. They're just wrong. Like, it's like, yes, somebody says, Kenny, it's funny. It's like telephone game where, it's just, you end up somewhere you shouldn't, even though you start with the right information.
Again, this is one of the things that has been laid out in black and white in several interviews and in one or other of the supplementary guidebooks as well. It's a record of note that Kenny has never been Levi's father. He's always been his uncle. So,
but it's funny in the leaks because, of course, someone would have hold on that page and so Kenny and Dad and be like, "Oh my God, that's the big reveal," but it's not at all.
Let's move on. We got an ask on Twitter from Shymshym related to Levi's awakening, and Shymshym said, "Did you notice that Levi's powers looked like the Titan transformation? I wonder if that gives some credence to Zeke's claim that the Ackermans are the outcome of Titan experimentation. I would love to hear your thoughts." So I know this is one of those things that I wrote countless theories on and could not wait to get clarification on. And of course, we've not gotten that clarification. So I don't know. Any thoughts for Shymshym about that?
I mean, I think, it was very noticeable that when Levi's powers activate, it looks very like a Titan transformation. It's drawn in a very similar way. So I think it does lend credence to the fact that there is a connection between the Ackerman's power and the power of the Titans. And I think it's Zeke, that says that the Ackermans are a byproduct of Titan science. Is that right? That's during the Marley arc.
It got changed. It got changed to Titan chemistry.
Oh, that's interesting.
In the like the volume. So I'm not quite sure what Isayama's thinking there. The difference between just general science and chemistry specifically.
But there's somewhere else. I think it also says that the Ackermans can harness the power of the Titans without becoming a Titan, and I can't remember where it says that.
I think it's where Aaron was discussing it. I can't remember what it's like in the translated version, because you can kind of interpret it a few ways, and this is where Isayama drives me up the wall. While remaining in human form is one way you can translate. I'm not sure what way the official translation had it. You'll be able to harness the Titan power while remaining in human form is one way you could read it, all right. And that's where I did kind of have half a suspicion, all right. But there is another part that kind of I'm not sure whether I'm reading too much into it. It's the discussion between Uri and Kenny in the Answers Guidebook. It kind of translates to Kenny finds out, the way Kenny finds out that he can't take the Titan power.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I think that had to do with the fact that we assume that it's because he's not one of the Reese.
Mm-hmm.
But it's whatever way Isayama said it, it kind of translates like it's not possible constitutionally. And I'd always wondered, is it because he's trying to say that the Ackermans can't turn into Titans, rather than that because Kenny wasn't a Reese, so he couldn't take over this power. So there are kind of weird hints here and there that it does have something to do kind of the Titan power, all right. Because the other thing is the Ackermans can go to the paths.
And again, I think that does seem to be, or it seemed to be part of canon or accepted that Ackermans couldn't be turned into Titans. There always seemed to be that assumption, although I think a lot of people would have been hard pressed to explain, to point to exactly where that's said. So, but it would have been really interesting to get more about this. But I think the fact that we do get this little flash of what looks very much like Titan transformation in Bad Boy is really interesting.
Well, it's just an interpretation, but I always took it to mean that either they've been injected with something, or they could even be still, but they already have this power, and this power does not transform them. So another explanation, which is not as satisfying, is that possibly that's how Isayama has learned to draw intense physical emotions, and so that's the way. I was thinking just like very technically, perhaps that's how it conveys it, and so even if it's different, it looks a little bit the same.
This is why we have an artist on the show. Oh,
exactly.
Marie, that part in the Fly book where he was talking about like faces being hard to draw, certain faces, but then round faces are easy. I think that's why Armin, Historia, like they all looked exactly the same because he had this one style of face. They all looked related. So I thought that, clarified for me why same face, because
yeah, especially in a work with so many different faces, precisely.
He had 3 faces, basically, and they just made their rotation. But getting back on the topic. Okay, so I do think it's interesting. So Levi described the awakening as suddenly like knowing what his body was doing. He didn't feel afraid anymore. Like he felt like he'd been dipped in water. And I compared that to Mikasa, who, again, at that moment, she stopped shaking. And what did she say? Yeah, the second I stopped trembling. And then again in chapter, I think it was like 78 with Bert, when Bert finally accepted his fate or finally had this moment of clarity, he said, "It's a strange feeling. I barely feel any fear at all." So somehow, Bert was already a Titan, but he hadn't had his purpose, I think. So once that purpose connected with the power, everything took off for him. So there is a consistency there.
That bit in the answers about maximizing their power, but it's more the fact, I suppose, that Isayama puts it in the service of the person who of their lord or whatever it is. So this is what I always did consider was the Ackerbond, or more specifically the Acker power, I suppose. So when Levi has this strong will, in his case, it does seem to be connected to the vow to kill Zeke. I think that might be the only instance where we really see the Ackerman's Acker power being activated, other than in Bad Boy. Because Zeke points out, like, what a monster, because this is what I think is the real Ackerbond moment that unfortunately Isayama never explained properly. It kind of ties in together for me that, how would I say, Levi's strong intent to fulfill the vow is what gets his Acker power activated. I suppose that it all kind of ties into the promise he made to Urban, and that's his strong will, basically.
And certainly there has been a lot of debate over the years about, particularly before the series ended, about Levi's vow and his determination to fulfill it and how that would play out. So yeah, I think it is interesting that, Zeke does comment about, how relentless Levi is in his pursuit.
That leads into the second part of Mysh's Ask, Shymshym on Twitter. They asked just for some Ketty, crucial general Ackerman lore, if we had any. Let me read that part. Mysh writes, "I have no question, but I would love to hear some discussion on Kushal and Kenny and in general the Ackerman clan. I know we won't get more Ackerlore from the manga, but I'd love hearing some theories about them." So does anybody have anything? It doesn't have to be necessarily related to Bad Boy, just anything about the Ackerman in general.
I think one thing that comes across is there is, and again, Tsuki will be able to remember the exact source of this. Oh, it's one of the Bitsatsu Shonen Q&As was about Levi and his relationship to his mother. What kind of son would he have been? And I think Isayama said something like he would have been I can't remember how it was phrased, but a son that would care for his mother or something like that. And I think Bad Boy very much shows that he did have this very close relationship with his mother, which is really nice. Again, it's another one of these really nice little callbacks to seemingly random things that Isayama has said in the past, but have obviously been there as part of his own lore for a long time.
Yeah, just a quick point that I did feel like, see, because we weren't shown his relationship with his mother except as one panel when he was this wee little baby. So it's nice to know that he was actually old enough to know that his mother loved him, or at least to know this for sure. And that I thought was a very nice touch.
I remember a piece of meta that I read back in 2014 from somebody who was in the field of psychiatry, and they said at the time that just based on studies, how empathy is learned, and Levi being this is before we ever had any insight into Levi, none, that Kenny Ackerman did not raise him, that he was raised with love, that level of empathy can only be learned with love, and that children need at least 3 years of intense bonding or else they're damaged by it. So it was funny even back then. Somebody like Kuchel was not named. This was not even a character. Knew Levi would have been raised with love, and I always thought it really does speak. I don't know if Isayama's got a team of people helping him or what, but he had clear ideas in his head when he started writing, and so whether it was there or not, the writing indicates that this is the way the story was going to be.
I also saw some really nice, or several people comment on the fact that you don't really see that much of Kuchel in the chapter. And when you do see her, you see part of her face, or you see her in profile. You never see her full on. And I saw several people commenting that they interpreted that as meaning that Levi can't actually remember what she looks like. He only has this very kind of subtle impression of her. And really the thing that he remembers about her the most is her grace, which I thought was actually really lovely and really poignant.
So he remembers how she was like and how his interaction with her was like. And I think that's kind of more important as well than how she did look like.
I have a question for you guys, and maybe you can answer this too. Now, my assumption had always been that the Ackermen were persecuted, and so Kuchel went underground for protection. But Kenny clearly could go between both worlds. He wasn't, he was above ground, he was underground, he had free reign of everything. Is there more to it than that? Like, do we know why she ended up underground?
I don't think so. I think there's more to Kuchel's story that has never, as far as I'm aware, has never been explained or made explicit. And I think, you made the point yourself, Momtaku, that when we see Grandpa Ackerman, he seems to be living quite comfortably at the end of his days, despite the fact he's very elderly and infirm. He's in a clean bedroom in a nice looking house.
Above ground.
And, Kenny is able to clearly go wherever he wants, although that could just purely be on the basis of his strength. So it's, as far as I'm aware, it's never been made entirely clear why Kuchel in particular had to not just flee, but flee into from what we can see in Bad Boy, not just poverty, but real deprivation. I mean, the image that we see of her, her clothes are torn and dirty. I mean, it's clearly, she's living in horrific circumstances, and I don't think that's ever really explained why she had to go to such extreme lengths, particularly when Kenny is knocking around there and everyone's terrified of him. He obviously wasn't in a position or wasn't inclined to protect her. So was she fleeing her own family as much as she was fleeing persecution? It's hard to say. And again, it's one of these things that does crop up periodically in fan fiction. Fan writers have got, speculated as to why this might be.
I would be inclined to also think that Kenny is able to go wherever just on basis of strength, because it's hard to imagine someone leaving his sister in those conditions unless she wanted it. But it's also hard to find a reason to why she would have wanted it. And it's possible also that perhaps Kenny gets that freedom from his strength, but also from Uri at some point, and it doesn't extend to anyone else. So it can, well, depending on the timeline, I guess that the timeline would change a lot of things depending on if he ever goes back to underground after that. And if Kushal is already dead, of course.
It seems that either he didn't go looking for her previously, or she deliberately concealed herself from him. Because obviously by the time he finds her, it's too late.
Yeah, and he only goes to check on baby Levi to see that he's still alive, and that's what surprises him. So yeah.
But he knew about he knew that Kushal was pregnant, so he must have met her at some point, and he knew where to go and look for her again. So it's not entirely clear what Kushal's motivation is to stay underground. It was Uri who called off the persecution, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's in chapter 65, right? Or 65, 69, where once Kenny is positioned with Uri, the persecution backs off. And he's pictured underground saying, well, at least there's fewer enemies after me. So again, he was, even back then, I would assume when he contracted with Uri, that would have been long before Kushal died. Maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, that's certainly one bit of the timeline that is still very, very slippery.
Fuzzy.
Is when does Kenny meet Yuri and when does Kuchel die?
He looks so much younger. He's clean faced, very to me it looks like he was younger than he was when he's talking to Grandpa Ackerman, at least.
He's a great character, Kenny. I would love to see a spin-off just about Kenny.
We should have got maybe a spin-off on him. Maybe that was the character we needed more of.
So moving along, unless somebody has more to say about Ackermans, we did obviously get the briefest look into Levi's post-canon life, and it's what we assumed. He is helping rebuild the world. And I know a lot of us were really happy about that. And he's still with Gabby and Falco and Onyankopon. So that last panel in the manga, he did build on that to give us what comes next.
I really like the way that the ending changed subtly from the manga to the anime, and that the way that change is picked up in Bad Boy. Because of course in the original manga, the last panel we see of Levi is he looks like he's on his holidays in London with Onyankopon and Gabby and Falco, and it's a lovely, lovely panel. It's a beautiful panel, and it's so lovely to see them all together. But it did feel a little bit jarring in juxtaposition with this horrific slaughter that has just happened. Whereas I thought the ending in the anime, which is very unexpected, where you don't get that panel at all. Instead, you see Levi in a refugee camp, still with Gabby and Falco and Onyankopon. And then, of course, carrying through into Bad Boy, you see this, that they are actually working together to restore the environment that, of course, Eren has absolutely obliterated. And I really liked that change. I thought that was a really nice change. And I think it's very much in keeping with Levi's character that this is where he would be. You know, he's not on the ship with the others involved in the diplomatic efforts or going back to Paradise or to try to talk to the Jaegerists. He's not interested in that. He's trying to rebuild the world for humanity. So he's, in a way, he's still doing what he always did. He's still trying to save humanity.
I was wondering whether the timeline's kind of the other way around, because was the cover of the volume released first before the last part of the anime came out? In which case,
that's a good question.
Isayama had the idea already.
Well, I suspect he probably had the idea. I'm not sure it came out before the anime. I'm not sure, actually. It's a good question.
I think we need to look up when the anime aired.
Yeah.
I feel like it ended. So we got this in October. I feel like the anime ended in October as well, didn't it?
They probably came very hard on the heels of each other.
So I think it all tied in together then, the anime ending and the manga cover.
I can check when the manga cover came out, because I wrote a fic based on it. So that's one way I can check.
We have data.
Yeah, we have data. We have data on AO3.
Exactly.
All I've got to do is try and remember what I called the damn thing.
There's too much there.
There is way too much there.
99 or 100?
Oh, there's over 100 now. There's about 101 now, I think.
Okay, The Toward the Tree on That Hill aired November 19th, 2023. We got the cover October 2023. Am I right? Is that right?
I think so. Because was it the 14th of October or something? The 4th of October was the announcement, but I'm not sure when the cover was released.
Right. It wasn't that long after. So you're right. I think you're right, Tsuki. I think we got the cover before we got the additional epilogue.
I think for most people, Levi's ending is I think the big part of it was him being in a wheelchair and being disabled. And I feel like for many people that's kind of a negative ending for him. But see, one of the things is this, the Survey Corps. The whole point of it was for them to go outside into the world. And I remember reading this write-up that I'm still very touched by, because it was a Japanese person who kind of pointed out the whole point of the Survey Corps was to go outside and see the world. So it's like Levi is the kind of the representative of that ideal of the Survey Corps. So he's going to see the world for them. So that was when the manga came out, actually. So that's the one where you see Levi on his travels. So that was the way this person interpreted it, and I always thought that was very nice. So he's carrying on their mission, or the accomplishment of their mission, that now that they've managed to go outside, that's what he's doing. He's seeing the world for them.
Yeah, I've certainly read and indeed written quite a lot of fic about that, how Levi is taking the opportunity and also feels a responsibility to go out there and witness the world for all his comrades who can't do it themselves, that he's lost like Erwin and Hanji and Squad, and that he is the last of the Survey Corps, and he's going to see the world on their behalf, which I've always found a really touching idea.
I appreciate you bringing that up, because I think a lot of people forget that the Survey Corps' mission originally was exploring and eventually reclaiming territory. We only ever see them battling because that became such a large part of their job, but it was filled with people who were curious, who wanted to experience the world, experience life. And I think that's just beautiful that Levi's doing it. Like, that's absolutely beautiful.
I agree. It's a lovely ending for him.
Yeah.
So one last thing before we finish our chapter discussion. As an American, I feel like I don't have a horse in this race, but how would you rate Levi's tea making technique?
I'm going to give him, I think, a solid 8 out of 10, because he's doing pretty well. I mean, for somebody who is obviously deeply traumatized and very young, and you can see that his poor little hands are shaking as he takes the tea and he puts it in the teapot, and he takes care to time the steeping of the tea, but he forgot the most crucial point, which is he really needed to warm the teapot up before putting the tea leaves in the pot. So I'm afraid I'm going to deduct 2 marks from that, but bless him, he did really well, so I'm going to give him a solid 8 out of 10.
2 whole points.
2 whole points.
Okay, Marie, what about you?
There are some things that are very right in his tea making technique, and there are things that are very wrong, such as using hands where he has like teaspoons right there. But I guess it's also like Los said, the traumatic experience speaking. So I think that earns him a 7 for me.
Okay.
He's almost there.
Tsuki, what about you?
Like Los said, I was too busy enjoying his making of the tea that I actually did forget that he hadn't heated up the teapot, which I would consider quite an important part of it. And the other thing, I suppose, is the amount of tea he puts in. It's kind of, we don't know if it's the right amount. But on the other hand, he did time the tea, and he did pour it through the strainer, so he's kind of like has half of it there. So as to how it would taste, I guess 7 or 8.
Yeah, that really doesn't seem like enough tea. Now that I'm looking at it again.
Maybe he's rationing.
Yeah, and his hands are very small. He's got very small baby hands. But it would be enough for me, I have to say. I must admit, I drink my tea very weak without any milk in it. So it just like a little waft of the tea leaves through the water quite often does me. So I'd be good with Levi's tea, I think.
You would like it. It's just leaf water at this point.
Leaf water, yeah. I'm good. Yeah. I'm good with leaf water.
That's just. I am Tim leaving it seep until like you forget it. Basically.
Oh no.
This is me too.
You just leave it in.
If it's strong enough to stand on, it's too strong for me.
You're not a real tea drinker.
No. Damn. Outed as a fake tea drinker.
But you heat up the teapot.
So. But I do heat up the teapot first. And I do check the temperature of the water.
Wow.
So where are these sugar tongs? I wouldn't even know what to look for.
So in the box, there is a panel where you can actually see the box, which I'm looking at it here. So when Levi returns to Kuchel's flat, at the bottom of the page, there is a picture on the little box, you see? And the box opens, and on the right-hand side, there's a teaspoon, which he didn't use. And on the left-hand side, there is what looks like sugar tongs.
Okay, and there are 2 cups. He has 2 cups.
Yeah,
so...
and there's also, it looks like there's a milk jug and a tea caddy and possibly something else there as well. So it's a full tea set.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I like I said, like this is, I'm American. This means nothing to me.
I am going to have to find a pair of sugar tongs for you and send them over to you.
What do you do with sugar tongs?
You pick up sugar cubes. They're specifically for sugar cubes.
You do not use your filthy hands.
Exactly.
It just occurred to me, like the tea caddy, that's a Japanese tea caddy, isn't it?
Is it? It does look a bit like that, yes.
Okay.
This is quite interesting because in the choice of no regrets, it's a kind of a square tin.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. And the design on the teacup to me looks like a very sort of classic, sort of English almost design.
Well, I have a wild theory on that.
Uh-huh.
Well, it's not so wild, but like specifically this set, Olympia so Kuchel stole, and then everyone realized its value. So maybe it is in fact coming from outside. Perhaps it's not produced there at all.
Or perhaps it's an antique as well, like it's been passed down the generations.
Do you know, I would actually be very curious to know if this is actually a real China set, because given what we know of Isayama, he does everything means something. So it would not surprise me if that is an actual China design that you can
like there's
buy
too much
somewhere.
Detail.
Exactly.
The detail is too consistent, like it's too purposeful.
It's like, remember there was a panel, the dress that Gabby wears at the end of the manga, and somebody traced the dress to an online store, and the name of the dress was the same name that Gabby used as her alias. Do you remember
that?
I can't remember. What was the name that Gabby used when she was...
I don't remember either, but I do remember seeing...
the post, that was the name of the dress. And it was this check dress. So I would bet my life that this is a recognised China pattern from, I don't know, Royal Doulton or God knows, somebody like that. And
we need a tea expert.
We do. Well, we need a China expert, which I am not.
More like it's even worse.
But the shape of the teapot looks kind of familiar to me as well. And the pattern on the cup is so distinctive. Yeah, I wonder if that actually exists.
We will try to find it, and if we find it by the time this episode is out, well,
I'll add it to the show notes where you can buy Levi's tragic tea set,
which you can now buy for the price.
Exactly.
I'll bet you would find that on eBay somewhere.
Probably so. All right, guys. Well, anything else? Our very last ever Attack on Titan podcast.
Well, is it though?
We can always come back to talk about anything.
Yeah. And he did say that he would never write anything else, and then the French fans inspired him to come out with Bad Boys. Exactly. So, maybe we just need to hope that he will go back to France and Get bullied
and
some
see more disappointed faces that he needs to try to cheer up. That's it. We just, And if he ever comes back to New York, I'm going to just make sure everyone knows, like, just sit there and stare at him. Don't smile.
That's so
Don't
funny,
cheer.
especially since you know how he talked about how he was so scared to meet overseas fan for the first time and how he would have been devastated and all of that. And just imagine if everyone was just dead silent in that room.
Oh, bless him.
Yeah, bless him. That all feels very final though, like the little extra chapter and all of that.
He did discover the magic of drawing on a tablet, so maybe that
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
So that is, I think I read this correctly. This Bad Boy manga is the first one he drew digitally.
That's what he said.
Which is pretty incredible because I can't tell a difference.
No.
He did make some, if I remember correctly. Well, one of the things he talked about is that you could kind of make a double line. And did this. So I was looking. I think this is on page 2. So the blur marks are actually a double line.
Oh yes.
If you can see, I think that's what he's talking about. The other thing he mentioned was that he could do much finer white marks. But the funniest one is that I suppose that's the bit of, let's see if I remember correctly or I understood it correctly. So it was like because he had no idea how to draw digitally, so he had his 3 assistants and they're all around the table. So like he was saying, rather than like, how would I say, like a Zoom conference or whatever, it was like an analog, like the old days. It's like a training camp, or the word he used there, like when I look at it, you see all these pictures of summer camps, or so it was that kind of a look. So he said like that was what it felt like he was there with his 3 assistants. I assume he's looking and it's like, how do I do this or that? So like I don't draw digitally, but I've seen some of these speed runs or speed, what do you call it, and I'm looking at it, and 3/4 of the way the artist decides, actually the head's a bit small, I'm going to make it bigger, and I'm like, you can do that.
You can do that. You can absolutely do that.
I seem to recall him saying at one point that he thought about switching to digital sooner, but thought it would be too obvious. And I don't have a source for that. But
it seems probable, and I didn't know this information, and now that I'm looking at the pages, it says very visible in the white marks on Levi's hair. That's the most visible thing, because it has the shape of a brush that fades off with pressure. And I did not pay close enough attention before, because I would have spotted that.
Wow, that's amazing.
So it's kind of cute if you visualize him with his 3 assistants around, and they're all trying to tell him how to do
trying
things.
To find the right size of brush. And
if you click this,
can you sympathize, Marie?
Yeah, Isayama sensei, please, no, it's too. It's not the right color. Switch the tool. You're drawing on the wrong layer. Oh no! I can see it.
I think that was my favorite part of the Shingeki Fly too, was when he was that exact same thing, because you get the idea of like a bunch of people like trying to get their mom to like use the cell phone the right way. That is exactly the vision that I got from it.
It's so very cute.
Yeah. It will be interesting to see though if it does inspire him to draw more, though, or to see where he goes from here, whether he does start, drawing, another manga, or if he does revisit this series. I don't think we've seen the last of him yet.
But he's still very young. So.
Exactly, yeah.
He's too busy driving all over town now that he's got a driver's license and infinite money and spare time.
I'm sure he'll get bored of that eventually.
What is it he's doing now, playing in the ocean and driving a car? Those were the 2 things he mentioned?
I don't quite remember the bit, but I was checking out one of the things, because that's what he wanted to do, like after he finished, was nothing, but he has not managed to accomplish it. But it kind of ties in a bit back to his idea that like dreams, remember which one is it? In one of the guidebooks, dreams are best when they're not accomplished.
Left unfulfilled. Yeah.
They're left unfulfilled. So it's kind of an interesting tie back that he talks about, that it's still a dream as far as he can see, to be sitting around doing nothing, but he hasn't achieved it yet. But he kind of thinks that if he does, it could be very boring as well. But it's still there. It's still a dream. It's still something he's reaching out for or looking forward to. But he hasn't achieved it yet.
That's a really good point.
So I don't know. It's like part of, I think, the reading of the story when it comes to dreams. A lot of people did kind of see like Erwin's situation negatively because he died without fulfilling his dream. But Isayama's outlook on it is like, it's nice to have something there that you're reaching for in your life. So I don't think he ever meant for Erwin's situation that he didn't achieve his dream to be a negative idea, because he doesn't see it negatively himself.
No, I would definitely agree with that. Definitely.
Anything else? Or should I let you all get to bed?
I think that's a lovely point to end it on,
Yeah,
actually. I think that's a really nice point to end it on.
It's beautiful.
All right. Well, I thank you all so much. Tsuki, my first time speaking with you. What a pleasure. Let's make sure it's not the last time, because I have enjoyed this so much.
All right. Thank you.
And of course, Lost and Marie. I mean, thank you guys. I will treasure this episode as much as I've treasured our others.
Always a
it's so
pleasure.
great to be back.
Yeah.
And we can be back again.
I hope so. I hope so.
Let's brainstorm ideas. We can have a whole episode on Ackerbond, Ackerawakening.
We actually could, you know.
We could.
I think Lost has so many more things to say.
All right. Well, thank you all so much. And let's do it again.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Bye.
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 Welcome back. Luna, we missed you.
Aw, I can't say I missed the discussion, but I did miss you.
You're so done with Attack on Titan. Like, I can't even...
I mean, I am done with the story, yes, but I do still enjoy some of it. Not all of it, but some of it.
Right. Well, and I think that's what was so surprising to me when you went to Japan, that you did go to Attack on Titan events, even though...
Yes, I did.
Did you go there deliberately to do that? Or, I mean, did you have those planned?
I think when I booked my trip, there wasn't anything scheduled. So, and then I think when I went there, I found out they did schedule some events, or like collab cafes mostly. I don't think they had anything else going on, to my knowledge. And there was nothing going on in Tokyo because the series had already wrapped at that point. I think I got there like a week after the show ended.
So it wasn't in your planning, though, to go because I know, like, I went to Japan during Erwin's birthday because I'm just, stupid like that. Like, it just was like, you know, if I'm going to go to Japan.
I would be there and, like, the series was ending and it was, like, the 10-year anniversary or something. I was, like, hoping for, like, a big to-do, but there really wasn't. So I just tagged along to the collab cafes because I remember you going and seeing all the pictures, and we did that whole live stream with Coffee Live about all the collab cafes and how horrible some of the food was, and it was like, yes, I need to experience this for myself.
Was it your first trip to Japan?
It was, yeah.
Okay.
So I went for a little over 2 weeks, and kind of stayed mostly in Tokyo and Osaka. And from Osaka, I did a lot of traveling to other cities.
Okay. Did you go to the, you didn't go to Hida?
I did not go. No. I didn't see the statue in the middle of nowhere.
With one bus Levi's a day. Nose.
Yeah. I did not.
Okay. Did you, so yeah, speaking of Coffee Life, did you get to spend time with Coffee?
I did. I actually stayed more or less, she lives in a apartment building, and they have like several guest rooms downstairs. It was kind of like a hotel almost, the building she lives in. So they had like a doorman, and there were like convenience stores down there, and like a little cafe, which was amazing. And then they had
Wow.
different themed guest rooms. So they had like a Western style room and a Japanese style room, and I stayed in the Japanese room.
Okay. You slept on the floor?
I did. My God. I didn't realize how flat the mattress
Yeah.
was. Like, you have to sleep on, because my back was like, her husband helped me like pile up like 3 mattresses. I felt like the Princess and the Pea at a certain point, 'cause it was funny, but it was not the most comfortable. If you're not used to it and you have a bad back like I do, it's an adjustment. But the room was gorgeous, and it also came with a really nice like Japanese wooden bath, and that was so relaxing. Would highly recommend it. Did you try one of those when you were there?
I didn't. I did stay in a traditional room, slept on the mat on the floor, and my
Yeah.
back is fine, and it was still a struggle. Yeah, if I ever have the pleasure of like staying with coffee, I would be like, Western room, please.
Western room, please. Yes.
But maybe the bath is worth it. I did, when I was in Japan, I did visit an onsen and, the public bathing, which was
So
religious. Good. Oh my God. But I've never done the wooden bathtub. I've only ever seen it in like Miyazaki movies.
Well, I think they were doing the Western room, but they had just like a normal bed. I stayed there as well, but it was really nice. And the onsen, you have to go, and because it's so relaxing. I felt so mellow. I could fall asleep just like that afterwards. Also went in the morning when it was like freezing cold out, and you shower beforehand, and you go sit in the onsen, and it feels wonderful, even though it's freezing outside.
So the one that the onsen I visited was like, it was kind of indoors. It had like open windows. Yours was completely outdoors?
They had several you could choose from. So one had an indoor and an outdoor. At night, I tried both. And then in the morning, I could only reserve the outdoor one. So
Okay.
Before I had my traditional Japanese breakfast, I did a morning dip as well, which was great.
And you were able to get like a private onsen, right? I was with like all the ladies, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah. All the naked butts, I remember. Yeah, no, I had a private one. I could reserve one for an hour. So that was really
You're
nice.
A coward.
I'm not a coward. I know. That was what I just wanted to relax and be naked in the freezing cold by myself.
I wanted to be naked with all the ladies because I wanted like the whole social experience. But anyway, it was amazing. Either way, it was amazing.
It really was.
Okay, so tell me about the Attack on, since this is an Attack on Titan podcast.
I know, yes.
Tell me about your Attack on Titan events.
So the first one was in Osaka, and it was like a collab cafe where you could sit down to eat. Unfortunately, they didn't have any reservations for that anymore, so I went up to the door and asked if maybe they had a cancellation, but they didn't. And they did allow for takeaway, so I ordered like the Hanji drink, which was a purple soda of sorts, and I ordered some merch. And I think I got like 3 or 4 Connies. And I don't like Connie, but I also don't know anyone who likes Connie. So I tried to give it away, but like the good thing if you go sit down at the cafe is you can trade with people, because like there's always someone who likes your favorite, I guess, and vice versa.
Is that true even for Connie?
That I don't know, because at the other place I went to, I did not get Connie, thank God, but I did trade with people. But yeah, so that was kind of a disappointment, because I felt like I wasted quite a lot of money on merch that I'm not going to use and nobody else is going to use, but I also don't want to throw it away, because if I throw it on the land pile, then it's even more useless.
Right. So, too bad we are not in touch with Lady Moe anymore. She was all about...
I know. Listen, if there's anyone out there who wants Connie merch, listen, if you can have it free of charge. Take it. Take all of it.
It's all the same? Like, or different Connie merch?
Coffee Life also gave me like a huge bag before I left with all sorts of Attack on Titan merch. I need to figure out what, but I think there was also some Connie stuff in there, so I probably have quite a lot at this point that I can different stuff that I can give out.
All right, Connie
So
giveaway.
maybe we should do a Connie giveaway. Yeah,
right.
The funny part is, like, if you go to these cafes, they're not like just on the ground floor. They're like hidden away. They're like a dirty little secret almost. Like, you have to take the elevator in some dodgy street to the 4th floor, and then it's weird. Like, it's not advertised really well that there's a cafe, let alone a collab. So you really have to know about it in advance, because you wouldn't just stumble upon it, right?
That was my experience too with Sweets Paradise. Like, if I had not had somebody with me, I would never have found it. Never. Like, I think it was up on the 3rd floor. There's no English signage, and again, like you said, like, you're getting on an elevator in some sketchy looking building and you're just like,
I think I went to Sweets Paradise in Kyoto, which was on a main street, and it was kind of advertised outside, and they had free, like, the swimming anime. They had a collaboration going, and I was like, hell yeah, I'm gonna go there. So that was fun. And
wait. They had free in 2023?
They did, yes.
Like, why? What, is there like something new?
I don't know, not to my knowledge, but they were having a collab. So I went and I got my Sosuke merch, and there was a girl sitting next to me with, I think, her dad. And they were just eating the food, and then she got like everyone. She ordered so much food. She got like 1 coaster for everyone. So she had Sosuke and I didn't. I got 2 coasters and I just gave them both to her. And it was kind of funny because she didn't really speak English and my Japanese is not that good. But we figured it out. So
oh, this is making me wonder. Like, I'm ready to like ignore you and go search Google and see if there was like a free movie or like free something that necessitated.
Maybe. I would assume there was something. Yeah.
Huh.
So that was already a better experience than the Osaka one, just because you could interact with other fans, which is like half the fun of these things, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the second collab was also in Kyoto. And again, this was from like a sake company. Again, you have to go to like this weird part of the city, into this building that Google Maps couldn't really locate. And then take the elevator to the 4th floor. And then as I took the elevator and the doors opened, there's this big Irwin cutout staring at me.
Oh, yeah.
But that was really nice because they really decorated the place completely in Attack on Titan, like cutouts and posters, and they had the music playing. There were a lot of fans there, and I would say they were mostly female and mostly my age and up, like up to your age, I would say, maybe older even.
Absolutely. I'm not.
So only women in there. That was interesting. Like, I don't know if the fan base is mostly women there, but it's definitely the target audience for these type of events, I would say.
Yeah, that was my experience. Everywhere I went for Attack on Titan events, it was women or moms and their children.
Yeah. Saw some moms with a stroller there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was cute. So
we really should, like, I'm sure you've got pictures of like the Irwin cutout. I'm not saying this for totally selfish reasons. We should put some of them on the website.
I'll try to put some some pics on the website and you can check them out.
Yes.
So that cafe wasn't really focused on food or drinks. They had a couple of specialty drinks, but I just got like a black coffee, and they had some special like Japanese treats. And one was in the shape of a teacup, I believe, and the other in a potato. So I got the potato.
What is it? Coffee says always the damn potato. Like, she's so
exactly.
sick of potatoes at these events.
But this didn't taste like potato. This was just pure sugar, kind of almost like marzipan. But this was really interesting because they had a ton of merch, not just specific to the event, but like also a lot of older merch from previous events that I didn't have yet. So that was nice. And I picked up some stuff for friends, and yeah, it was really. I got to talking with this husband and wife couple. They were also from Osaka. They came there especially for the event, and we got to
Aw.
talking. And she got Reiner coaster, and I got her to trade with me because I really wanted Reiner.
Oh, of course.
I gave her my hunchie. She was glad because she was a Levi fan, so she could have maybe joined the podcast had we become friends. But again, so she didn't speak any English. Her husband did, so he was kind of like a go-between between us.
So I wonder if like Reiner is one of those characters. Certainly not Connie, because I mean, who loves Connie except for Lady Moe? But like, I think Reiner's divisive enough that you probably could swap with anybody to get like, or like, or maybe it's not that way in Japan. I know here, Reiner is still like really divisive. I would think his merch would be a little easier to trade than say Levi. If you'd gotten a Levi coaster.
Oh yeah. Well, I would have been able to give that away. If I wanted a Levi one, yeah, I would have been in trouble with that target group, especially. Yes. Because she was definitely into Levi. She got into the series because of Cool Japan in Universal Studios. That was very interesting as well. So that's where she found out about Attack on Titan, and she thought Levi looked really cool. So that's how she got into it.
You mean like the amusement park? She like saw the rides or something? Oh, cool.
Yeah, because she lives in Osaka. So in Osaka, that's where Universal Studios is. So
wow. So kind of late in the series then.
Yeah. So she had watched the last 2 episodes. I still haven't.
Oh my God. You still haven't?
And I'm probably never going to at this point. I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything.
All right.
Even though it was better, even though I like the memes that I see, but
yeah. It was, I mean, I didn't see near the criticism that the anime that we had with the manga. I guess with the release of Shingeki Fly and Bad Boy, I've been feeling like really nostalgic. So I've been listening back to like the podcast we did with Petter and James and the one that I did with Nasty and like, I don't know, just like remembering like when we live streamed the last chapter just with us and our little group.
Yeah, that was that was awesome.
I've been feeling all nostalgic. So I might go back and maybe watch a little more of the series again just to, I don't know, remember, I guess. It's over. Like I was thinking this is probably our last Attack on Titan podcast.
I mean, if this isn't our last one, I don't know what's going on in this world anymore. So.
I know.
But I've heard rumors that he wants to do other stories.
I don't think so. I mean, I wouldn't say no, but I'm not going to hold my breath either.
Yeah, same. And if it's a spin-off, it might be a completely different story with completely different characters in a different setting anyway, so.
Oh, we talked about this on the podcast. Did you know that he had originally planned on doing a side story that was a prequel? 100 years before. Okay, and instead he did the teacup? Yeah.
I know.
How do you feel about that?
I mean, didn't we kind of have Before the Fall anyway, like that manga series? I know he's not the author of that or the mangaka. But I don't think people would have been as interested in that as in a story about Levi.
Right. No, I agree.
So, I mean, from that point of view, this makes more sense.
I know, but it still makes me curious. Like, what would the 100 year before canon? It would have been about the Exodus. I mean, 100 years before the canon story is when Fritz left, right?
When the walls were built, right? So
yeah, so it could
maybe would have seen that. Like, were they chosen? Were they sacrificed, the people who became the Wall Titans?
Exactly.
Maybe. Could have been interesting too. I mean, that would have given us something new, except I was reading the Bad Boy and I was like, yes, Yams, give us nothing. Woo.
Well, we got a little bit. I
mean, for me, it was like, yeah, it's, I felt it didn't add more to Levi's character or backstory.
Well, read a good translation before you. I mean, the good translation, I read the same bad translation. The good one was actually more like funny and quirky. And, I laughed several times. Like it was good. It was good. Okay. I did not mean to interrupt you. So
that's
anything
fine,
else
don't worry.
from Japan? I know you, non-Attack on Titan things. You went and fed the deer in
Nara. Yeah.
Nara?
So at first, I actually didn't plan on going there because I thought, like, okay, I'm going to feed the deer, and then what? What else is there to do there? And I thought it wouldn't be that much fun, but it is amazing. It is so much fun. So if you walk a little bit away from like the beginning of the park, there's some places where there's barely anyone. I also went a little bit later in the day, I guess. Maybe that helped. So I had a whole group of deer to myself. And yeah, they are a little aggressive and they were headbutting me, but that was part of the fun to me as well. Like, I'm not a little girl, so they didn't knock me over. Maybe if you were like short and tiny, that would be different. But yeah, and they would go crazy for the crackers. So it was a really fun experience.
I never even thought about that. Like, are people allowed to take their small children? Because I would imagine, I'm a big girl.
It's a public park, but they do state like that they're wild animals.
Yeah.
Which I'm not sure if they're wild, but they're definitely not domesticated. So yeah.
I guess that's good to know. I mean, we're both big girls, so we can hold our own against a couple of deer. Okay.
And they do cut the antlers to make sure that they don't injure like each other, but I guess that also helps with all the tourists. They don't get torn to shreds.
I guess they do get knocked down pretty regularly, though.
Yeah, I didn't see anything too aggressive while I was there, so that was fine. But they do headbutt, definitely.
And you were there in December during off season?
Yeah, late November, early December. So it was pretty quiet, luckily. It might be different if you go in the summer.
Yeah. Anything else?
From Japan, I'm thinking. Not really. I mean, Disney, but whatever.
Oh, I'd forgotten you'd gone to Disney.
Yeah.
Did you go to Disney Sea or the regular Disney?
Disney Sea, because I feel like the regular Disney, I've been to so many versions of that. So I just wanted to do Disney Sea because that's unique to Tokyo or to Japan, I'd say. So it was really cool. Like when you enter the park, there's this big volcano in the background, which is very interesting, like an artificial volcano. There's like this Venice area, and they did like a replica of Ariel's castle under like I don't know if it's a castle or palace or whatever, but it looks gorgeous. It's very colorful. It's much better than another iteration of Sleeping Beauty's castle. So it's really beautiful. It's really unique. It's something different. They had a lot of good snacks. They also had a potato churro. I would not recommend.
Not the damn
Stay away
potatoes.
from potato. Stay away from the potatoes, people.
Okay, wait. So, like, I know for like Disney people, like the whole thing is like to go to all 6 resorts. Does that count? Like, can you mark Tokyo Disney off your scorecard or whatever?
I mean, I want to go back as they're opening a new area, which looks super cool. I think it's called Fantasy Springs, but it's not open yet. So, and they have like a Beauty and the Beast area, so they do have some things that you cannot find anywhere else, I think. Okay. So I should probably go back, but that's on my next trip.
This is a total tangent. So you've been to California, Florida, Paris, Disneyland Paris?
Oh yeah, many times.
Tokyo. Now Tokyo.
So just China left.
Shanghai and
Hong Kong.
Okay.
And then, and then the regular Tokyo Disney land as well, I guess. Because I've been to all the other parks and all the other locations. Yeah, as a Disney fan, it was really fun going there. Had a great time. And it is right by the sea, so it's nice and windy there. Which is nice on a hot day.
In my iPhone app, on my weather app, I keep places I visited or places where I have my friends. So like whenever I'm looking at the weather, I can flip through and see how my friends' day are doing. So I keep Tokyo in there because of coffee life and also because I love it there. And it seems like they're very similar to us here in the Southeast United States, like, you know, kind of this weird, mild climate, sometimes crazy warm weather when it should be winter. So that makes sense. Yeah.
Well,
plus global warming.
I thought, by the ocean, it might be similar to the Netherlands because it's also by the sea, but no.
Nope.
It was
totally
much nicer,
different.
the weather there.
That would be a perfect transition to talk about my trip to Netherlands.
So you came to visit me.
I did.
A couple of months ago.
Yes.
Finally, after years and years of waiting, because you were
I
supposed to come
know.
in 2020, and we all know what happened there. So 4 years later, but you made it.
I really did. Let me look at the calendar. Oh, you're right. I went March. It was March 7th. So it's been 2 months. How has it been 2 months already?
I don't know.
Huh. Yes, but finally, and it was like a totally last minute trip. And I actually sort of like one of my kids wanted to go to for their own fandom meetup. And I think what this whole experience has helped me to appreciate, like when I get into something, I get into it like 150%. And it's like my kids, they clearly are my children because they're into like their own fandom. And flying, around the world to go spend 2 days at a fandom meetup in the Netherlands is apparently like, something they want to do. So I use that as a chance to like, well, I should go with them because not that they're not like grown-ups and can't handle themselves, but booked it all last minute. Told you I was coming, and my first trip to the Netherlands. And you know what? Even the weather, I don't want to say it sucked. We did have one sunny day, right?
That could be like the weather all throughout that month was horrible. I think
Yeah.
even if you look at like, I feel like we had a late spring this year because we had so much rain and just cold weather. Like finally the trees are in bloom and my cats are finally shedding. Normally that happens late March, but no, there's hair everywhere now.
I almost feel like, though, if I had had like beautiful sunny weather the whole time, I wouldn't have appreciated it. Like I think I liked that it was kind of gray and
I
overcast and
mean, you
cold.
got the quintessential Dutch experience.
I did, and I'm happy about that. And it's always a reminder. Like today here at home is like a rainy day, and of course, my plan is not to leave my house. Who wants to go out in the rain? But on vacation, it's just like, who cares? It's just, let's go, let's do it.
Yep.
Nothing stops us. And, I think eating outside in the cold is something that I never do when I'm not on vacation. But on vacation, we sat by that canal and had that incredible breakfast. And it was like, wow, I am living my best life ever.
The food was amazing, but normally I also wouldn't do that. I would like to sit inside when it's that cold, but yeah, the food helped a lot.
It did. And I have no expectations about Dutch food. But everything of course, we didn't eat a lot of traditional Dutch food.
I mean, what Dutch food?
Everything we had was incredible. Every place we visited was incredible. Like if I hadn't met you, the Netherlands would have never been on any bucket list of mine. Like it's just not a country that I must go and see, right? But after being there, it's like, it's on my bucket list now, and I'm checking it off only because it was one of those things that I will never regret. Like it was just the best. And being with you, seeing your town, meeting your kitties, spending what? I guess only 4 or 5 days together, but like
it was too short for sure.
But you stayed, I mean, and the fact that you stayed with me the whole time, like you didn't have to, but you did. And it was amazing. It was amazing. I'm still
mostly.
Yeah. Well, yeah, mostly.
I remember when we ordered pizza and my phone died and we couldn't find a charger. So I had to run back home.
Oh, that was the worst. How in the world how did we even get the pizza? Like,
I had to call them because they were like, they had an error with their system. So I think they were officially already closed and then they still made it and had to bring it out to us. And but we got our pizza and we watched a lot of, half of Avatar: The Last Airbender on Netflix. Did you ever finish that or did you not?
I haven't watched any more since Netherlands.
Okay. I finished it and
yeah.
And it's not great, not terrible.
Well, I was listening back to the podcast with Petter and James, and you were talking about it, and that's been, 3 or 4 years ago?
A couple of years, yeah.
Yeah, and you were like, I could tell you were just like, the original people had quit, and it was, you just were like preparing yourself for just absolute garbage.
It wasn't absolute garbage, I'll say that, but I remember talking about it that some of the sets looked like they belonged in a Disneyland ride. They look so bad and fake. But some of the CGI is really good. Some of the acting is really good. I think the worst is probably the script. The script could use a lot of work. The fact that spoiler, but the fact that they didn't learn any water bending at the Northern Water Tribe was what?
Oh.
Was such nonsense. Yeah.
Hmm.
But I will say the Sokka, like the fact that he wasn't as misogynistic wasn't that big of a deal. In terms of his character development, I feel like he still did really feel like Sokka to me.
Okay. Well, what I saw on the 4 or 5 episodes that I did see, I thought the cast was fantastic. Did Zuko grow on you?
He did, just like the original. Because in the original, I also was like, what is with him? What's with his hair? What's with his face? What's with his attitude? Those were my initial reactions when I first saw Zuko. That was kind of me reacting to him in the live action version as well. But he grew
So everybody
on me.
has the Zuko journey. Manages to supersede the medium or the genre. Yeah. Now, what about Iroh? Did Iroh ever grow on you?
Not really. No.
Okay, that's a shame, man, because he is such a...
He will never come close to the original. Yeah. I'm sorry. Iroh in the original is amazing. What I do like is that they like show more parts of like the Fire Nation royal family's family life, like both like before everything happened, but also like kind of how Azula is doing while she's still in the Fire Nation. Kind of like those little addendums I really liked. The Avatar state, how they interpreted that, amazing. Love that. There's a lot of cool stuff in there, but definitely room for improvement.
It's funny, in the same podcast, the Titan Tea Time podcast, we talked about maybe doing an Avatar podcast. So, hey, look at us.
Well,
we're doing it right now.
You're welcome.
Ta-da!
This is all you're getting. I'm sorry.
Check mark.
Yeah, I wish we could do more podcasts, honestly, but our schedules just aren't lining up anymore. So it's a miracle we're even able to record this, I guess.
Yeah, let's see if I get it edited now. This is May 14th, so let's see. Let's see what happens.
People listening in this, like when it finally uploads in July or something.
Exactly. No, I will crush it. I'm going to crush it. You see.
Will.
Dun.
I don't doubt you for a second.
It was funny after all this time, like trying to remember how to use the software, how, everything's changed. Yeah.
I mean, I have a new laptop and that wasn't cooperating. Things were literally falling apart, setting things up. So it was, it's been a while since we've done this. What was your favorite part about visiting me, or just visiting the Netherlands, I should say?
Okay, obviously seeing you. I mean, being with you was just incredible, right? And I just felt so taken care of, which I didn't mean to be like that. Like I like to be really independent and like solo travel. But I just felt safe and taken care of. Even when we had like that really bad experience, I still felt, aside from that, block that one out. I just felt cared for, and it was lovely. My second favorite was probably, and I think it's funny because like, this is like the tourist thing, right? Like people would roll their eyes at, but having those hot stroopwafels
those are not, I feel like those are not typical.
But the fact that we paid what, €7 each for them? Like apparently,
no, they were €3 each, which they are a little bit pricier, but it's Amsterdam, and it's one of like it was a touristy kind of market, but it's like here you would pay maybe €1.5, €2 if we'd gotten them at the market in my city. So,
but this was at the Albert Cup Market, right? Is that how it's pronounced?
Albert Kuip.
Whatever.
Same difference, yes.
Like stroopwafels, they give you like on the airline flights, they give you like one of the snacks, like the best snack. Everyone agrees, hands down, best snack on a flight is when they offer a stroopwafel. Nothing could prepare me for like the real thing. It was just, that was a great moment.
Good. Yeah.
And then, so that being with you, eating yummy food, Oh, my other, like, not a favorite moment, but the one that made everybody else laugh was when you were on the lookout for me to try bitterballen or some French fries and mayonnaise or some, like,
Yeah.
Dutch whatever. And you picked out, like, Mr. Smith's, the secret hideout of Mr.
Oh,
Smith's.
right. Yeah.
And, I was immediately, like, nodding my head aggressively because, like, in my head, Mr. Smith is like Erwin Smith and like, ooh, SNK crossover. Like, I just, could live out my
And it
fan
totally
fiction.
did not register with me at all.
You didn't get it at all. And the fact that my mind went there and yours didn't.
Yeah.
So you were rolling your eyes pretty hard at me for that one. But
For Mr. Smith's best kept secret, yeah.
my friends were all cheering me on, like, live that fan fiction.
The funny thing is, though, is that it used to be like where they made coffee, or at least they, I don't know if they ground the coffee there or whatever, but it was like something to do with coffee, which is Eldian. So,
there we go. Okay.
yeah, so it would be like more of a Marley thing, right? No filthy Eldian would drink coffee.
Well, hey, I mean, there's the Marley Irwin crossovers. We could still
Hey,
work
who knows?
with that.
Fan fiction. What if Irwin was born in Marley instead?
Trust me, they're out there. I don't read them, but
I'm
they're
sure
out
they
there.
are. I don't doubt that for a second.
And then, of course, Rijksmuseum. Did I say that even remotely?
Yeah, no, that was pretty good. Okay. That was pretty good.
Rijksmuseum was just, I mean, and you got those tickets for like €4 each. It was incredible. Like, I saw all those paintings from Animal Crossing in person.
I wish you could see my face right now.
I'm sure. Renoir, Rembrandt, Vermeer,
the
Van
milkmaid.
Gogh. That's one of those things where I always think, like, how very fortunate I am that I get to see things that we'll just stick with the milkmaid. I mean, what a treat. Like, I've known that painting my whole life, and I actually got to see it in person with you. How cool is that?
For me, it was also kind of a treat because it had been closed for 10 years while I was a teenager in my early 20s. So I never got to visit it back then. So, and then afterwards, when it reopened, I just never went. Yeah, it was nice to share that experience with you for the first time.
And then, of course, the Franz Hall exhibit. Like, if anyone is listening to this, all three people who are listening to this, if you've never seen the artwork of Franz Hall's, look it up. I mean, it's like the absolute, like, it's happiness in a bottle, like, right? Yeah. Sunshine on a wall, like.
They're so amazing. My company actually organized like a private like soiree where we'd have the entire wing to ourselves if we wanted to go there at night.
Oh.
But I had already seen it with you, so I didn't go. So, but otherwise I would have. Yeah. It's really, he's so different from his contemporaries from that age, and just all his subjects look so happy. They're all smiling. It's so bright and colorful. Highly recommend his work.
Apparently, like, Van Gogh was a huge fan of his because of the brush, because he was one of the first artists not to hide the brush strokes, to just go ahead and let them show. And how those brush strokes, even though they look like imperfections, give the painting so much movement and life. And apparently he was admired by Van Gogh and some of that generation of artists, but really was not on like the Dutch masters list until much later. So what an oversight. It makes me wonder, like, who else should be on the Dutch masters list that isn't? Oh, and that woman artist, Joanna, what's her name? Like, I was reading about her.
I don't recall.
I remember we were walking through and I saw some art by a woman named Johanna something, and it struck me because, number one, a woman, and number two, gorgeous. But apparently she was either one of his students or his contemporary. And most of her early work was credited to him. And it was only later that people realized, no, this was a woman. There must be something in that style that I just am drawn to, because I zeroed in on her and him immediately as just like, I have my new favorite Dutch artist. Just really special. So I thought that was really nice that there needs to be more work of the women masters, right? There were women who were masters, even though they weren't given the same opportunities. So it was nice to see her given her name back on her work, and her work still be included, even though it wasn't by Franz Hals, it was by her. They didn't somehow deem it like less of a masterpiece.
Oh, no.
So that was kind of cool. But yes, amazing, amazing trip. And I could probably talk about it for hours.
Even though you only were here for basically hours.
I know. Who else goes to Europe for 5 days? Just me.
I know. It was insane. I felt like we were constantly traveling somewhere.
Yes, but it was so comfortable. We don't have trains here. Like, I love the European train system.
Yeah, I mean, from Amsterdam to my city, it's super easy.
Yeah.
It's so easy. And the only downside, you have to come back because you have to try the egg ball, the eierbal. For anyone wondering, it's like a boiled egg in some like ragu and then a crunchy coating, deep fried.
Ugh,
And it's
can't
typical
wait.
for my city, and it's so good though. It's so good.
Is it really? Okay.
It is. 100%. But so yeah, we could only have it here. It's kind of regional, so we didn't have it, unfortunately. But you have to come back for that, and you have to ride a bike here. So I actually tested one of those rental bikes on Sunday when I went to visit a friend in a different city.
Yeah.
They are not comfortable.
Okay.
So I'm kind of glad we didn't rent that one. I mean, they're fine for short distances, but yeah, I prefer my own bike.
I don't know if it's my age or my inexperience, but the idea of riding up, I mean, I thought I was ready for bikes in Amsterdam. I was not ready for bikes in Amsterdam. I have never seen anything like it in my life. I would be terrified. But yeah, give me like a year to get my confidence up. I'll start riding regularly in like calmer circumstances, and maybe I'll do it.
Maybe, yeah. I'll take you to some sort of remote village where there's no traffic, no population, and then you can ride your bike there.
It's a plan.
Before we sign off, is there anything else we want to talk about?
I don't think so.
Sorry, no upcoming projects. We'll see you
Nothing.
when... Yeah, guess we'll see you when we see you, which probably won't be anytime soon, unfortunately. I hate it. I wish we could record more often, but it is what it is at this point.
I do too. I'm still in like the Chojin X. I get the news. I get the alert.
I know. I get so many updates about characters, and I'm like, "Who is this? What's going on?" And I want to read ahead, but I'm not doing it. But I think if we ever get back, we'll probably continue from whatever the current chapter is. I don't think we'll make a whole catch-up podcast.
Oh heck no! There's no way. We'd never get it done.
Maybe a quick summary of what we missed. But that's it. Yeah.
Oh, it'd be fun to like listen to our predictions and see like how wildly off base we were.
I mean, judging from our predictions for Attack on Titan, I can only imagine how wrong we must have been for some of those.
Absolutely.
My only question is, how is the Yamato Mori gang? Are they finally showing up on time? That is the one big question I have at this point.
Or are they still leaving children like... Yeah, clearly inexperienced children alone in like terrifying situations.
Who knows? I have no idea. Alrighty. Well, I guess that's it for now, guys. Thanks as always for listening. We really appreciate it. And yeah, who knows? Maybe see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.